This is another psychotic statement from Donald Trump.
Mr. President, your beloved New York City may well be led by a communist soon, Zohran Mamdani, who in his nomination speech said he will defy ICE and will not allow ICE to arrest criminal aliens in New York City. Your message to communist Zohran Mamdani.
Well, then we'll have to arrest him. Look, we don't need a communist in this country, but if we have one, I'm going to be watching over him very carefully on behalf of the nation. We send him money. We send him all the things that he needs to run a government. And by the way, they get about 3 times what you get, Ron. If you look at the per capita, Florida gets 1/3 of what New York gets in terms of the numbers. Why don't you give us those numbers?
Yeah, well,
because that's what we should send him.
Yeah, well, like sometimes people say Florida gets more because they count Social Security recipients, but that's not money to the state. Those are seniors that live here. If they moved to North Carolina, you could count it there. So it has no interaction with the state government. They get more in the city and state governments than we get.
Right, substantially. We're going to be watching that very carefully, and a lot of people are saying he's here illegally. He's, we're going to look at everything, and ideally. He's going to turn out to be much less than a communist. But right now, he's a communist. That's not a socialist. I've always said we will not have socialism in the...
He's saying, a lot of people are saying he's here illegally. Like, he's doing the Andy Ogles shit.
Ogles is calling for Mamdani to be stripped of his citizenship. He claims Mamdani may have acquired U.S. citizenship through, quote, concealment of material support for terrorism. He went on to call Mamdani anti-Semitic.
Insane, dude. Oh, as an American citizen, you want a fucking election, but we don't like what you have to say? Sorry, we're gonna fucking denaturalize you. Psycho shit.
They skipped socialism, and you got a lot of them like that. And you see AOC, she's out there with her, bad IQ. She's out there ranting and raving about how wonderful he is. And look, so far he's winning. He still has a race to win, but so far he's winning, and he has an advantage as a Democrat in New York City. Yeah, but you would think that a Republican would be able to win. Or you have a good independent running, Mayor Adams, who's a very good person. I helped him out a little bit. He had a problem, and he was unfairly hurt over this question. He made a statement to the effect that this is terrible. New York City can't have all these immigrants come in. And like he was indicted the following day. And I said, that was a phony indictment. And it was a phony indictment. That was a Biden indictment.
Saying anything like anti-immigrant, especially about New York City, is perhaps the dumbest place you could say. It's one of the most diverse cities on the planet. Literally, a city that's history revolves around people literally coming in to New York as their first point of entry into the nation state. That's what the fucking Statue of Liberty is about. That's where Ellis Island is. It's so insane. Yeah, the U.S. doesn't like foreign democratic elections where a socialist is elected. Now the U.S. doesn't like domestic democratic elections where a socialist is elected. Regime change incoming. Anyway, my statement on Donald Trump's threat to deport me and his praise for Eric Adams, who the president helped out of legal accountability. The president of the United States just threatened to have me arrested, stripped of my citizenship, put in a detention camp, and deported. Not because I have broken any law, but because I will refuse to let ICE terrorize our city. His statements don't just represent an attack on our democracy, but an attempt to send a message to every New Yorker who refuses to hide in the shadows. If you speak up, they will come for you. We will not accept this intimidation. That Trump included praise for Eric Adams and his authoritarian threat is unsurprising, but highlights the urgency of bringing an end to this mayor's time in City Hall. At the very moment when MAGA Republicans are attempting to destroy the social safety net, kick millions of New Yorkers off of health care, and enrich their billionaire donors at the expense of working families, it is a scandal that Eric Adams echoes his president's division, distraction, and hate. Voters will resoundingly reject it in November. Great way to bring this back to the general election. Yes, there's also more that we must discuss. Kirsten Gillibrand has apologized to Mamdani over jihad comments. As you guys know, Kirsten Gillibrand was said some incredibly racist shit of the Brian Lehrer radio show, saying that Zohran Mamdani wants to kill all Jews and do a global jihad.
The callers, exactly the New York constituents that I've spoken to that are alarmed. They are alarmed by past public statements. They are alarmed by past positions, particularly references to global jihad.
You racist piece of shit. Fuck you. Like, shockingly racist shit. Coming from a Democrat, it is shocking. Like, in the past, Democrats have condemned Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar under similar Islamophobic terms, but I've never heard a Democrat this closely associated with the city come out and say that, okay? Like, you're not Charlie Kirk. You have to understand, like, this is uniquely racist. This was uniquely racist for a Democrat to do. Under normal circumstances, for totally reasonable statements that Muslim congresspersons make, the Democratic Party will, you know, take the other route, silence, which, of course, is a tacit endorsement of all the attacks that they're receiving, right? Or sometimes being like, well, people should be more careful of the words that they use, like, you know, like subtweets, things like that. Kirsten Gillibrand took it on the chin. Like, she took the John Fetterman route, which, by the way, I don't even know if John Fetterman had said something as racist as Kirsten Gillibrand about Zohran. Has John Fetterman said anything like this racist about Zohran? I don't know. It was truly ridiculous. I'm sure he said some shit. He doesn't know what's going on, but like, this was wild. Gillibrand now has apologized to Mamdani. So your phone calls worked. We and many other people literally blasted the phones on her office, demanding a retraction and an apology. And I'm glad that it came. But the very fact that it existed was insane to me. And obviously, she will most likely never recover from this, I think. Austin Allman says, it could be a one-off, but Gillibrand being forced to apologize with a manufactured hysteria over Zohran's refusal to condemn every word in the Arabic language fades without him giving an inch feels like a watershed moment. I think we're playing by different set of rules now. Yes, that's a hopeful way of looking at it. But yeah, in the past, judging by what took place against Ilhan Omar and judging by what took place against Rashida Tlaib in the past, remember, she was censured for saying from the river to the sea, Palestine would be free. Rashida Tlaib was. And the lack of defense for these individuals from the Democratic Party when they were receiving a torrent of hate versus a Democrat actually forced to apologize while other Democratic leaders are also slowly but surely, even if they don't immediately rise to the occasion and offer or issue a, I mean, they're still forced to, even if they don't endorse, they are still forced to congratulate the victory, yada, yada, yada. We shall see what happens. The rules change every day. The richest people in the world are mobilizing the Dems to cut Zohran down. That for sure is happening. David says, the question remains, why does she walk into the Lehrer interview without knowing off book what Mamdani had actually said? She sounded frazzled. We're all guessing at what's going on inside her head, but my guess is that the specifics were immaterial to her. She expected to be able to characterize his comments however she pleased without pushback, true, and she has been in a state of disbelief over the last week that isn't how Israel politics works anymore, which finally broke today. Yeah, and Kirsten Gillibrand is far from the only figure that is going to be the recipient of this cold, hard reality that is coming for them. There is no other group or no other advocacy aside from pro-Israel advocacy where actual institutionally important figures can go on national television and say, this guy's a Jew hater, he wants to kill all Jews without any evidence whatsoever. There are still people who are doing that. Eric Swalwell did that. Richie Torres implied it as well, not to the same degree as Kirsten Gillibrand, because he still has his progressive bona fides, despite the fact that he's Israel's attack dog. Jonathan Greenblatt still goes on television and lies all the fucking time. In a few weeks, Fetterman will be like, who the hell is Zorro Tahini? He's the Internet Explorer of politicians. I was told that this guy, Zorro Tahini, won the New York City mayoral primaries. And I am very scared. Am Israel high. He is going to be a really bad mayor of Tel Aviv. Oh boy. A primary campaign that pressures Hochul to work with Zohran and raise taxes on the millionaires. This could genuinely get Hochul to switch opinion. Antonio Delgado. Zohran cannot deliver bold change alone. He needs a governor. Okay, see? There are people who are recognizing the attitude shift. Antonio Delgado, Zohran cannot deliver bold change alone. He needs a governor who's willing and ready to work with him. Governor Hochul, whatever, refuses to tax the ultra wealthy or big corporations to achieve affordability for all. If you want change in New York City, we need a change in Albany. Oh boy. Hochul already defending Zohran. Pressure is already working. I don't care if you're the president of the United States. If you threaten to unlawfully go after one of our neighbors, you're picking a fight with 20 million New Yorkers, starting with me. Damn. Yes, queen. Snap. She snapped. Yeah. By the end of this process, if this mobilization is moving in this direction, Governor Kathy Hochul is going to be known as Wokel, okay? She's going to be like, I've changed my name. I'm Governor Kathy Wokel. I want to not only raise the tax of the billionaires, I want to criminalize being a billionaire, okay? Kathy Wokel, we ride at dawn. Who's going to tell her about Mahmoud Khalil? Well, one day at a time. Also, the final vote tabulations came out. By round 3, Zohran wins 56% of the vote, with Andrew Cuomo receiving 44% after everyone was crossed out, with Zohran receiving 102,000, with Andrew Cuomo receiving 219,000. It's still not enough. It is pretty crazy, though, that Zohran's first round rank 1 voters was still higher than Andrew Cuomo's final votes with all of the additional ranks. Eric Adams got, I think, less votes than Zohran did in the final vote tabulation than Zohran did in rank 1, like round 1 of ranked choice voting. And yeah, I talked about this already. Let's add to this. Adams won by 7,200 votes, and Nancy Pelosi promptly invited him as a featured guest to brief congressional Democrats on messaging strategy. Zohran won by 116,000 votes, and Hakeem Jeffries is basically insisting he's never heard of him. When Eric Adams won the Democratic primary in the mayoral race, the same thing that Zohran just won, he was propped up as a national figure. Nate Silver was literally talking about how he should be the president. He should run as president in the Democratic Party. Mamdani put up FDR numbers on and Dem-elites refused to endorse him because he won't toe the line on Israel. They'll couch it squishy and mopey, heeding concerns for Jewish voters and liberalese, but it's 100% about Mamdani's refusal to spout Israel has a right to defend itself problem. Some people are saying it's not just about Israel. They think it's like socialism as well. But I think it's mostly about Israel. I don't think Brad Lander will be getting this level of animosity when there are a lot of, Brad Lander himself was a DSA guy until 2023. And Brad Lander also had a bunch of progressive policies, maybe not to the same extent as Zohran Mamdani, but, you know, I want to mention something here, but like, people might get mad at me for saying this, but I don't think Brad Lander is a liberal. He's a liberal Zionist, but I don't think he's a liberal. He was a DSA guy for most of his life. I mean, it's okay to say he's a liberal, to be like, look at the liberal socialist allegiance, like this is what it's supposed to look like, but like he was a DSA guy, you know? He's just nerd maxing. So a lot of people think he's got liberal aesthetics. I've been at the DSA enough to spot a sockdem who left the DSA for being too far left. I mean, I don't think he left the DSA for being too far left. I think he left the DSA because of Israel. And even then, he's a interesting dude. And the reason why I think he's an interesting dude is because I don't know if you guys know this, but we've covered some of his background here, and like a lot of the opposition, like a lot of the oppo research done on his background actually talked about how many dangerous radicals his office associated with, and he himself associated with, Linda Sarsour being one example, having actual anti-Zionist Jews come out of his tutelage. And even like it was basically like a breeding ground for anti-Zionist Jews, and also anti-Zionist, scarier than anti-Zionist Jews, anti-Zionist Muslims as well. So normally when someone is a liberal Zionist, they got the yellow ribbon on their Twitter account, and they basically regurgitate Kahanist sentiment. Brad Lander is not like that at all. He is a liberal Zionist, but he's like in the Bernie camp.
They're hoping to offer a choice to his left-of-center politics, but a president who is dead set against him.
Well, then we'll have to arrest him.
A stunning remark from President Trump about the winner of the Democratic mayoral primary after a reporter told him that Zohran Mamdani threatened to defy ICE. It provoked this response from Mamdani on social media. Quote, his statements don't just represent an attack on our democracy, but an attempt to send a message to every New Yorker who refuses to hide in the shadows. If you speak up, they will come for you. On the very day that Zohran Mamdani officially won the Democratic mayoral primary with a 12...
No, Brad Lander is a leftist, dude. Stop saying he's not a leftist. He is. Come on, dude. What's the expectation? Especially by American standards, especially by like elected official standards. Brad Lander is a leftist.
12-point, 56-44 win over Andrew Cuomo. He got a welcome to the wacky world of the 2025 mayoral race from President Trump.
The only reason why he's not like a actual full blown leftist is because he's not anti-Israel. I think he's even more than Elizabeth Warren is my point. Now, I don't think it's an unfair association to say that you can't be a leftist if you're a liberal Zionist. You know, he's a progressive except for Palestine, classic. But even then, he's like more progressive than the obvious person. Anyway, whatever.
Who said he hoped a Republican could beat him, or maybe the sitting mayor.
We have a good independent running, Mayor Adams, who's a very good person.
At an unrelated press conference on crime stats, Mayor Adams ducked questions about Trump, preferring to focus on the role of the mayor to let federal immigration agents do their job.
And anyone that is an elected or not should never interfere with federal authorities carrying out their function.
Mamdani said he was humbled by the breadth of his support. Over 540,000 New Yorkers voted for him, saying he is, quote, excited to expand this coalition even further as we defeat Eric Adams and win a city government that puts working people first. Andrew Cuomo is holding his cards close to the vest about whether he will actively campaign on the independent line he has secured. A spokesman said he wants to assess the feelings of more than 1 million independent voters who will be able to have a say in the general election. Extremism, division, and empty promises are not the answer to the city's problems. While this was a look at what motivates a slice of our primary electorate, it does not represent the majority, said a Cuomo spokesman. This as another independent entered the race, Cuban-American biotech engineer Joseph Hernandez, who took a shot at Mamdani's socialist platform.
I was born in Cuba, a country where socialism destroyed opportunity. My family lost everything.
I cannot predict what's going to happen in November except one thing. New Yorkers are energized. New Yorkers are focused. And they're going to come in larger numbers than we've seen before.
So here's the score.
Good analysis, man.
Card for November.
One of my favorite things is when people go, my family lost everything. I hate socialism. I'm from Cuba. My family lost everything in Cuba. And then you look at their family history and their grandparents were getting their eyeballs clawed out by the Batista administration, you know? And it's like, okay, dickhead, why the are you on the dudes who actually liberated your fucking family from the torture regime that was backed by the American government? Have a little bit of fucking respect, Ted Cruz. No, there is obviously the meta of people who left after, okay? My family lost their fucking sugar plantation ass motherfucker. Dude, it's hilarious. A lot of the expat culture, or a lot of the migrant culture in this country, because they came to America as like refugees, a lot of that culture actually shapes this like weird reactionary bubble. Even if Cuban immigrants themselves actually were escaping Batista, they will still turn around and act like they were escaping Castro. It's this very funny, completely made up story. This isn't to say that there aren't people who like escaped because, you know, they didn't want to give up their farms or whatever. But like there is a ton of people who just lie and say Castro tortured their family when in fact it's not Castro, it's motherfucking Batista. And yeah, Iran, there's this meta exists within Iran as well. People being like, oh, we left during the tortures that were taking place during the revolution. And it's like, but then you look up their timeline and it's like they escaped the Shah. What the do you mean it was the communists or the Islamists that tortured your family? You left during the Shah. It's not lost on me that I think a lot of people, in an effort to fit in, realize that they just have to lie about this shit. Damn, I didn't realize Batista was like that. I like Guardians of the Galaxy. Okay, yeah, the Batista bomb.
If he hits it, the streak ends. Batista going for the Batista bomb, and he got him.
Batista bomb, baby. That's what Batista was doing a Batista bomb on people's grandparents.
Donnie the Democrat, Curtis Sliwa the Republican, Adams on the independent line, Independents Joseph Hernandez, Jim Walden, and Andrew Cuomo.
Would you say the same about Venezuelans? Every group has this formation. For many that come far after that, they're escaping the harrowing conditions, oftentimes born about American intervention, born because of American intervention, whether it be like crippling sanctions or whatnot in Cuba or crippling sanctions or whatnot in Venezuela. But then in an effort to assimilate, in an effort to make a legal application for asylum, they're like, yeah, I hate the communism that has made me eat rats. And then that story that they tell others become their own story. Degenerate socialist, Venezuelan here. The reactionary aspect of Venezuelan expat is largely born from real degradation of material conditions and status in Venezuela under Chavez and especially Maduro. And you are right that U.S. sanctions played a role in that. But a lot of blame is on the incompetence and outright corruption of Chavez and Maduro. Leftists in the U.S. tend not to pay any heed to the latter of that. Not saying the opposition is any better, but it's not as black and white as the Fidel Cuba situation. I would go so far as say that that is a perfectly fair analysis for especially Maduro, but not for Chavez. And the reason why I would say not for Chavez is because Chavez was a great man. Yes, that. But also because Chavez spent so much time trying to diversify the Venezuelan economy and was met with the same exact forces that were directly aligned with the American Chamber of Commerce and the American CIA that literally successfully and then unsuccessfully tried to coup him. So it's not like Chavez didn't recognize that being a single resource economy was going to be a death sentence for Venezuela. When the going was good, he did actively try and yield better agricultural production, take some kind of control over the grocery stores. Like the grocery store owners are grocery store owners and media company owners in South American countries are like the most elite business fascists you can ever engage with. So they fucked them over very aggressively, as a matter of fact, and that led to obviously additional complications coming out of the Maduro administration, which basically has been running on Chavez's gains and the Chavista movement in perpetuity as the amount of supporters that he has gets smaller and smaller. None of these are there is no like real existing perfectly functioning socialist state. Socialist states are transitional states. There are transitional socialist states. And there are plenty of transitional socialist states that have tried to move in the direction of socialism. And I'm not going to sit around and be like, no, they suck. I think what's important is to learn from their mistakes. Sankara consolidated power as a bourgeois nationalist. Exactly. All right, let's continue with this.
Area results.
Here's another fake socialist, Zohran Mamdani. Where are the workers' councils? Why has he not advocated to violently seize control from the capital owners and deliver the means of production back to the working class in his campaigning? What a fake ass Zohran Mamdani is. Again, fake ass socialist, another bourgeois labor aristocrat born with a fucking silver spoon in his mouth. Or what were they saying? They were saying that he's like they were using the classic anti-Semitic trope against Zohran, which I thought was really funny. They were saying he's a rootless cosmopolitan who is controlling the media. It's actually Ugandan Indian Muslims who control the media. A ruthless cosmopolitan who's here to destabilize the superior Western forces, the superior Western civilization.